It is World Cup time. We have the Morocco-Iran game playing in the background, so my attention may be a little bit divided. But
my very good friend, our very good friend from Uruguay, their team advanced today.
Even though I wasn't rooting for them, I had to root for Egypt because of our friend Nadim.
He would have been. What are you, international? We know people from all over the world, man.
Yeah, it was. You know what? Egypt played. I mean, Uruguay had the superior team. They've got Suarez on there, and he didn't bite anybody this time. So I'll give him a few points for that.
Yeah, I know we have to do a quick show today, but how do you feel? What does America not being in this tournament mean to you? As a big fan, people know you're a big fan, right?
You know, I grew up with the United States not being a part of the World Cup. It had been in the World Cup back in like 1952 or something like that, and then disappeared. I fell in love with the World Cup when we were in Germany in 1974 visiting family. I was a kid. And it was there in Germany, and my mother's cousin took me to see a game, and it just infected you. It was just everywhere. And the U.S. didn't make it back to the World Cup until, I want to say, 1980 something. Not even then. It wasn't even in 86.
Well, there was the big year of 94
I want to say 1990. I want to say in 1990s when the U.S. finally made it back into the World Cup. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of grew up with the World Cup as something that nobody here was paying attention to, and the U.S. team wasn't ever part of it. So this is deja vu for me. Yeah. But it's disappointing because we fought our way back. We lost the NASL League in America and then built MLS from the ground up, which was all homegrown players, not foreign players, like, when the New York Cosmos had every foreign player, and Pele and Giorgio Chinaglia. And so it's disappointing that we've worked so hard to get back into legitimacy and then didn't make it. At the same time, the reason is because MLS is so successful in grooming players from other countries in North America. Yeah. I mean, you have players from, Guatemala and Trinidad and Tobago and Honduras and Mexico, obviously, all of whom play in MLS, and they've gotten skills and they've gone home, and those teams are now better as a result. So we face greater competition in our conference. So that, on the one hand, it's disappointing, but on the other, it means we have to step our game up.
Yeah. Well, 1994 was that great year.
Yeah.
Here, they were here, and then '98, it all kind of fell apart. Just 4 years later,
it did fall apart 4 years later. But you know what? We're going to have it again in 2028,
which Mexico, Canada, America, thing, which is interesting.
It's going to be fun. Yeah. My daughter's going to be 13; she'll be able to appreciate the games that I'm going to take her to. So
and of course, next year, women's
in France.
Cup. Yeah, so
I really want to go. I don't know if we're going to be able to go, but I really want to.
I'm pretty sure you're going.
I really want to.
I'm almost certain. Okay, movies.
Movies. So true to the spirit of the moment, we have a couple of soccer-themed movies this week. The first one is, I'm just going to put these out there real quickly. From First Run Features, Coach Jake. This is a really, really good documentary about the most successful high school soccer coach in the history of the New York City public school system. And he's won 17 city championships since 1994 when he began coaching at Martin Luther King Junior High School. And it's an amazing story. It's kind of a stand and deliver sort of thing because it's not really about soccer. It's not about the coaching. It's about how he used soccer to change these kids' lives, to change the school, to change the culture of where these kids came from. And it'll tug at your heartstrings. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's just a wonderful thing. And even if you don't like soccer, you know what? It's okay. It could have been any sport. And these are not just poor kids that in these schools. These are kids who are primarily immigrants. They come from Latin America, they come from the Caribbean, they come from everywhere, and he's changed their lives, and it's just really, really touching. And
we know
really,
what I
really
always
great.
say: some sports movies are about the sport,
the
actual sport,
and
then some sport movies are not about.
They're not.
The sport.
They're about the people.
Yeah.
And then we have a movie which I really shouldn't like because it's not very good, but I like it anyway. Alex and Me. Which, of course, the Alex and Me is Alex Morgan. If you don't know, Alex Morgan is the star right now of the U.S. women's national team with the retirement of Abby Wambach, at the last World Cup. Basically, Alex Morgan is now carrying this team. She is the star. She's the face of it. She does the modeling shoots and the Sports Illustrated suits, swimsuit shoots, and the whole thing. So Alex Morgan is the face of U.S. women's soccer right now. And so they made this really sweet but silly movie about this little girl, who really, really, really wants to. Her dream is to play like Alex Morgan. Alex Morgan is her, her great hero, her soccer hero, and she really, really, she's obsessed with Alex Morgan. And needless to say, there's a weird kind of dumb twist where she imagines that her Alex Morgan poster has come to life, and Alex Morgan is now in her life, and it carries on from there. It's a wish fulfillment, kind of a genie variation Aladdin fantasy movie. A little bit, it reminds me a little bit of No Surrender, No Retreat, where the Bruce Lee comes to life and coaches the kid on how to go out and fight Jean-Claude Van Damme in the ring. It's kind of dumb, but anyway, it's not really about the sport. It's about family and friendship and how to manage your life, and it's really sweet. It's silly, but it's sweet. It's called Alex and Me. It's on Blu-ray and DVD, and it also comes with Movies Anywhere on it, so you can add it to your Movies Anywhere library, which I certainly, absolutely will. All right, Tim, let's jump into some new movies.
A couple of new movies and some interesting things we have here, indeed, including, let's start with the big one, Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
Alicia Vikander is a lawyer. This movie had some problems, which is really interesting to me. That they did this better thematically, as a film better, almost 20 years ago with Angelina Jolie. They got the narrative right in that movie and blew it in this movie. The problem that a lot of people have with this particular Tomb Raider is that she seems to be really sort of attached to the boys in the movie.
Yeah.
Motivated by doing things for or because of something that some boy and or man needs her to do. And I'm like, man, they have not been paying attention. You can't have the Tomb Raider running around, doing. But anyway, that notwithstanding, big CGI movie. She's actually pretty good in the movie. I thought she was perfectly.
She's great, and I'm glad she got this payday because she won the Oscar, and then I was afraid, oh no, they're gonna. She's just going to get a bunch of art films for it. No, but they came at her with a big payday, and good.
Yeah, and good for her. And by the way, take the money. Go for the money. Go get the money. The movie's okay, but it's not really great for a whole bunch of reasons. Lots of special features on here. Daniel Wu is in this film. Daniel Wu from Into the Badlands.
Sure.
Our buddy Sherman Gustus is on that show. But it's an okay film, not fantastic.
It's so not worthy of the 4K.
A 4K Ultra HD? No, not really.
No.
You don't need all that for that. Particularly since most of it takes place inside of a digital cave. Cave. Zoe Dulch, Catherine Hahn, Tim Heidecker, and Adam Scott in this really sort of little interesting film that I actually did for the show a couple of months ago. It's called Flower. You start watching this show and this movie, and it opens kind of edgy, right? You got this sort of young girls, and they're doing this sort of like incredibly inappropriate thing, right? But they're doing this incredibly inappropriate thing for some pretty appropriate reasons, because adults suck. That's why. And they're sort of proving it all the way throughout this film. She ends up with this stepbrother. Stepbrother's a heavy kid who has all kinds of issues. She meets him right when he's getting out of some kind of a thing for rehab or something like that. And her and the stepbrother build this sort of interesting relationship. Look, the movie sort of goes a little bit off the tracks, but there's an interesting set of dynamics in here. Adam Scott playing an interesting character. I recommend this movie. I do. Some good performances, particularly from Zoe Dulch. She was really, really good in this movie. I think you told me that she's
Leah Thompson's and Howard Deutsch's daughter. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Looking at the kid for 20 years, did not know that. Anyway, Flower, kind of interesting. Not a whole lot on it. Special features include an audio commentary with the director, Max Winkler.
So I am enormously disappointed in The Death of Stalin, not the movie, but in the fact that they did not release it on Blu-ray. I don't understand this. The movie did extremely well. It is a great film. It could even be a dark horse for some award contention at the end of the year. And Paramount has not released it on Blu-ray. They have elected to go just with a DVD, and that is really, really disappointing. I don't understand this. Paramount, please put this movie out. You don't have to do 4K, but at least do DVD for crying out loud. The Death of Stalin is an unbelievably funny and smart movie. Here's what goes on here. This is a British-Belge-French co-production. I know a little bit about how and why that happened. I won't get into it, but bottom line is this was originally a graphic novel in France, and it was turned into by British filmmakers into a basically British comedy. Armando Iannucci, who is who did In the Loop previously, and he's a creator of Veep. And by the way, Armando Iannucci is Scottish. Just want everybody to know that. With that name, Armando Iannucci, he's
not
Scottish.
Italian,
Italian. Not Italian. He's Scottish. But anyway, it's basically a British comedy in the same kind of acerbic vein as In the Loop, about Stalin's death and all of the political machinations that ensue, how everybody is sort of wrangling for power after Stalin, kicks the bucket. And these are all actual figures, but they're all written as if they would be in a British comedy. And it turns the entire historical episode into the theater of the absurd, and it's kind of brilliant. Like Steve Buscemi, for example, plays Nikita Khrushchev. I mean, that's hysterical. I mean, Steve Buscemi as Khrushchev. If you're not laughing at just the thought of that,
that's
it's absolutely great. Terrific cast all the way through, American and British actors primarily, and it's a really, really smart movie. It includes almost nothing by way of extras. It's got deleted scenes and a featurette, and that's it. So I've got to believe that there's another release of this with a commentary on Blu-ray, with more stuff in the offing, hopefully when this thing makes a little run at awards season. So The Death of Stalin. If you got to see it, I'd rent it right now. I mean, I got to hope that there's a better version in the offing, because this is insufficient.
Doesn't quite get over the hump.
Yeah.
Steven Soderbergh, who is a real genre shifter over the course of his career, made this neat little Claire Foy movie called Unsane. This is a damn good movie. But Steven can do that.
He does. He kicks him out.
This is just a straight up horror film. But it's really, really super clear. A young woman is stalked by a guy. It's just a terrifying moment in her life. She decides she needs a break. Puts herself in a sanitarium. Puts herself in a sanitarium, and before she realizes it, she's trapped in the sanitarium. She can't get out, and then she realizes, she believes anyway, that the person who was stalking her is the guy who runs the question becomes, is this real or is it all in her head?
Right.
And Claire Foy just plays the hell out of this.
She does everything. I don't know where she came from, but she just, boom, appeared on The Crown, and next thing you know, she's amazing, and she's in everything, and she can do no wrong.
It's really, really, really good. Features all kinds of stuff on this DVD, on this 4K, Blu-ray, I should say, 4K Ultra HD.
Nice.
So it's a really, really neat. Certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and well, it should be. Supercon. This is a funny little movie, starring a whole bunch of people, most of whom you don't know, but Mike Epps is in it, and Maggie Grace is in it, and Clancy Brown is in it, and John Malkovich is in it. It's a movie about one of those conventions, one of those Comic-Con sort of conventions, you know? And you got all these guys, they put on the cosplay, and they go down there and they work at conventions. And a couple of people, one guy was a childhood star in the 80s, and another guy does voiceovers and cartoons. Anyway, they're having a hard time, obviously, because they're having to put on the tights and go work at this convention.
Yeah.
And they're sick of being jacked over by the promoter who runs this convention, and they decide they're just going to rob the joint. So it just turns into a heist movie. But I got to tell you, a heist movie with people in these wacky costumes with the capes and the tights on, that's funny. Almost doesn't even make any difference what they're doing. Supercon, neat little, very, very funny movie. Mike Epps cracks me up in this movie.
Mike Epps is, I'd love to see him just get another shot at another bite at the apple. He's kind of, he had his moment there in the 90s, and now he's kind of faded away a little bit again, but he's due for a comeback.
It's all about the right material.
Yes, it is. Let's knock that out, and then we'll jump into some.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Look, the Pacific Rim movie's interesting,
and we're going to give away one of these.
Yeah, we got two of them here: 4K Ultra HD and the Blu-ray DVD digital.
They're asking us to give away the Blu-ray. So we are giving away a Blu-ray,
which has all kinds of fantastic bonus features on it, deleted scenes, commentary track with the director Stephen Denied, all kinds of neat stuff. A lot of neat stuff over here on the 4K Ultra HD too. Look, these movies, interestingly, really play for the people for whom
Yep.
they play with. You know, I thought they were going to be a big series,
Yep.
sort of like all around the world. Not so much here in the States,
Yep.
but every place else on the planet, these movies are big.
I know.
You know,
That's why I was surprised. You know, I guess I wasn't surprised that they remade it or that they made another one, but the first one didn't do well here. Shockingly, it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro did a fantastic job with it, but it played huge overseas, enormous, and not even necessarily in Japan.
Yeah, spawned a series,
Yeah.
like a little television series, and a couple of more movies. So, you know, whatever seems to work for other folks.
So we're gonna give away the Blu-ray. Go ahead and send us an email to gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com. Put RIM, R-I-M, in the subject line, your name and address in the body of the email. And we will select one very, very lucky winner to get the Blu-ray of Pacific Rim, as long as we get it by Monday the 25th. We'll give you the weekend, Monday the 25th. You can go all the way to there, send us an email, and you will win a Blu-ray of Pacific Rim Uprising. So we're going to move into some docs right now. Smithsonian Channel does this thing called The Real Story. We've talked about a few of them before, where they grab a movie, and a movie that has some kind of a historical background to it, but they decide to lay the real story on us, which oftentimes, almost always, is a lot more interesting than the movie. In many cases, the story is just nothing has anything to do with. I mean, it's a bit of a reach. So the three that we have here are all over the map. It's True Grit, Braveheart, and Live Free or Die Hard. Now, True Grit, okay, fair enough. I knew that had some roots in history a little bit. I understood that, Rooster Cogburn was based on a real character and so forth, but I never knew a whole lot about it. So this is really interesting. Nothing, the background to True Grit is not much at all like what's in the movie. Braveheart, obviously, historical film. William Wallace was nothing like Mel Gibson.
I was going to say it's the exact opposite.
It's the exact opposite. For starters, William Wallace was about 6'10" tall,
as opposed to 5'8".
Yes, when they that's what put the fear of God into the English, was when they saw them lined up on a faraway ridge. They knew exactly which guy sitting on the horse was William Wallace because he looked like a superhuman giant. It was, Anyway, but this gets into some really interesting stuff, which is William Wallace somebody to be celebrated? That's the most interesting part of this, which was William Wallace really this heroic figure, or was he just basically a terrorist of his era? Was he unjustified in what he was seeking? And it's really interesting. A lot of the stuff in the movie obviously was fabricated, and they get into that, but they get into a lot of forensic history, which is very, very interesting. The Real Story, Live Free or Die Hard. That's the one that threw me. I'm like, are any of the Die Hard movies based in fact?
Really?
That's absolutely ridiculous. This is a little bit of a stretch. They just decided we wanted to do something that looks into cyber attacks on the United States and cybersecurity. So we're just going to sort of use Live Free or Die Hard as an entry point. Okay. There's nothing in Live Free or Die Hard that's even remotely attached to real life. But in this case, they just use it as sort of a launching point to explore a lot of the issues that are in the movie. So that's the one that kind of squeaks by here. But still, all really well done. Smithsonian Channel documentaries, The Real Story, True Grit, Braveheart, and Live Free or Die Hard.
Where are we going next?
Let's
not gonna feel these dots.
Oh, you know what? I got another one here. Let me do this one, and then I'll let you pound some of those. As long as I have the Morocco-Iran game on in the background, PBS has a doc called Bitter Rivals: Iran and Saudi Arabia, both of whom are, of course, in the World Cup. Neither of whom are going to play each other in the World Cup because they're not going to get out of group play. Saudi Arabia is just going to get beaten up. They're going to be 3 and done, which is too bad because that country kind of needs with the new crown prince and all, it sort of needs a new sense of belonging in the world. But in any case, this Frontline is one of the best I've seen in a long time, and that's saying something. You'd have to live in a cave to not know that there is this power struggle in the Middle East, in the Islamic world, between Sunni Muslim Saudi Arabia and Shia Muslim Iran. They are. They are just wrestling for dominance in the region. And as for the reason why, it's very easy to say, well, one is, the seat of Sunni Muslim, and the other is the seat of Sunni Islam, and the other is the seat of Shia Islam. It's more than that. One is Persian, one is Arab, and it goes much, much deeper even than that. So this gets into all of that stuff. The going back 40 years. And how it involves the United States, and it's really, really interesting, and it could even go deeper, but they just don't have the time to go deeper. So they're focused very much on this recent period, and all of its repercussions and ripple effects in the region, and it's just absolutely fantastic. Bitter rivals, Iran and Saudi Arabia.
A couple of documentaries over here. Interesting Smithsonian Channel docs. Which I happened to see when they were actually broadcast on the Smithsonian Channel. A Star-Spangled Story, Battle for America. It's about the Star-Spangled Banner, the song.
Yeah.
Francis Scott Key, of course, wrote that song, 1814, the Battle of Fort McHenry, I believe is when it was. Look, this is the thing about the Star-Spangled Banner, and it's mentioned in this documentary. There are 19 semitones, a range of 19 semitones.
Yeah.
Humans can't sing this song. Dogs can sing this song, but humans cannot actually sing this song as it is written because, it's just not viable. Nevertheless, it's an interesting sort of thing, the song, the way it was written, why it was written, some of the lyrics in the song, which people sing this song all the time. You and I think you and I were, I know I was young enough to actually sing this song in the morning when I was in grammar school.
Yeah.
I go back that far, middle 60s, late 60s. I'm not sure when they stopped doing that. But, pledge allegiance to the flag, all that kind of stuff, right? We don't really do that anymore. Thus, people have become kind of unfamiliar with this song and what it actually says. Anyway, this documentary goes back through the history of the song, what it means, Francis Scott Key, the battle for Fort McHenry, the very war that almost ended our nation. People forget that we had two of those.
Yeah.
People forget about that.
War of 1812 was a big deal.
We were almost done. They burnt the White House, folks. In case you don't remember, a bunch of brothers put that fire out, by the way. Let me
That's
just point
right.
that out. A bunch of brothers put that fire out. Anyway, neat documentary about that historical item, the Star-Spangled Banner. America's Greatest Monuments, another Smithsonian Channel. The documentary, very, very neat. Again, all of these wonderful monuments, war monuments to the founding fathers, monuments to moments in history, all over America, particularly the main ones in Washington, D.C. People go to them, they see them, they understand them, but they really, really don't know where they came from. They're sort of shrouded in myth and who built them. People get them wrong out all the time.
Yeah.
This neat little America's Greatest Document Smithsonian Channel sort of explains all of that, lays it out and gets it straight. I love this kind of stuff. I mean, to stand at the Lincoln Memorial and actually understand who did that and where it came from and who worked on it and how it was built, these things cannot help but change your attitude about some of the things that we have some fairly gnarly attitudes about in America. Good stuff.
Iran just scored, I want to point out, nearly 5 minutes into stoppage time with about a minute and seconds left in the game. This is unbelievable because Morocco has outplayed them. Morocco was the superior side here, and Iran just on a free kick got a goal. That is so.
It's an interesting World Cup.
Man, Morocco's mad right now. Wow, talking about rivals in the Arab world or in the Islamic world. Anyway. Let me see the replay on this.
You want me to talk about?
Oh my gosh, what a great! That's just bad defending. That's just bad defending. The defender lost his man.
Nice hitter.
Great header. Defender lost his man. He should have had him. Oh, that's terrible.
And you know what? Goldie.
Goalies, they depend on the defenders, too.
Yeah.
Man marking, it's all about. Anyway.
You got one?
Got another one from PBS. This is an American Experience documentary from Rick Burns, the brother of Ken Burns, who is also an outstanding documentarian in his own right. He and Lee Shin Yu did a documentary together called The Chinese Exclusion Act, which is about the Chinese Exclusion Act.
Yeah.
If you don't know about the Chinese Exclusion Act, with all of the discussion right now about immigration and everything else, you really ought to. It's a shameful moment in American history, but it's an important one to know about. This took place in 1882. Chester Arthur.
The one president that nobody ever remembers.
That's right.
And that's the thing that he did that nobody ever remembers.
That's it. Chester Arthur signed into law an act that basically said it's illegal for Chinese workers to come to America. And On top of that, if you are Chinese and you're a Chinese national and you're already here working in America, you're not allowed to become a citizen.
Yep, could not be nationalized.
It straight up singled out a single nationality, not just for constraining them from immigration, which they were entitled to do, but it said if you're here as a certain nationality and ethnicity, you're not allowed to become a citizen. And the reasons for that are, and the history behind that is fascinating. Not acceptable by any means, but it's fascinating, and it tells you a lot. So this is really, really worth checking out. It has a few interesting bonus video things too as well. But it is a really, really good documentary about something that just has become completely unknown to most people, and it's relevant. It continues to be relevant. So definitely check out the PBS documentary from American Experience, The Chinese Exclusion Act by Rick Burns and Li Shen-yu.
Very, very good stuff. I called him Morgan, Casper Collin film. Morgan is Lee Morgan, the extraordinary jazz saxophonist, who was just an absolute savant, particularly when he was young. So Lee Morgan was this wonderful jazz saxophonist who had this blisteringly fast-paced career, late 40s, early 50s. And then, like many jazz musicians, he became a heroin addict and sort of fell out of favor. But he was already...
Why was heroin such a thing in jazz?
Look, I could go into that, and I mean, we know Charlie Parker.
Yeah,
and all
so many of them.
So there that was. What happened to Lee was interesting. He had a comeback. He had a comeback because he met a woman. A woman named Helen, who he never did marry, although she did become his common-law wife in like the late 60s. It does not spoil anything for me to say that Helen eventually kills Lee Morgan. And it was a tragic story, actually based in deepest love. And it was all very sad, but this movie tracks that entire story. And what's interesting is it's called I Called Him Morgan, which tells you that the movie isn't about Lee Morgan. The movie is about Helen. I called him Morgan because Helen is really the central figure in this story. And it's that same old tragic story. She saves this man from the gutter. Completely reconstructs his life, rebuilds his career, makes him famous again. And what does he do? Younger woman. In an ugly moment. Nevertheless, it's a powerful, powerful film. I happened to talk to the director of this film last year when it was sort of doing the film festival circuit. Good movie. Southwest of Salem. The story of the San Antonio Four. In the early 80s and 90s, there was this crazy, crazy thing that was going on where the United States writ large, we started to believe that there were these satanic cults all over America. And that these satanic cults were here in California. We had the one here in California and then down in Tennessee and every place else were just doing all kinds of wacky satanic things to children. It was this thing that we believed, and we persecuted a number of people, including some children, for that. Well, these four women who happened to be lesbians were in fact arrested and prosecuted for engaging in a satanic cultist ritual that involved several young children. Fought the case, all this kind of went to prison. It was all. And what's funny about it?
400 years after the Salem witch trials.
400 years. And,
it's the same thing.
And even only from the perch of like, what is it, 35 years later, when you look at this material, when you look at these stories, it is plainly obvious that all of this was perfectly insane. And it's not like I was a walking around adult in the 1980s, watching these stories. But now I can see it was all perfectly insane. It was just a crazy witch hunt. And this film follows all of it from some of the early days of the trials and all of that stuff, including up to and including the moment when one of the accusers, the child accusers 23 years later recants.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's 25.
That's so tragic.
And she recants. And man, it's just a tragic story, but it's one that we don't know about. And if we did know about them, we probably would stop doing crazy things like this. Southwest of Salem, the story of the San Antonio Four. Very powerful doc.
All right, we're going to get into some cult and exploitation now. We haven't done one of these segments in a while, and we got some really, really good stuff. Oh, there's Cristiano Ronaldo. Portugal, he's the man. He's the man. He annoys me. He drives me crazy. But anyway, Portugal. All right, so from the Nikkatsu Erotic Films collection from Impulse Pictures, we've got two more of the Japanese Women in Prison series, which was a genre in Japan just as it was here. So after Jonathan Demme basically birthed that genre here back in the late 60s, early 70s, making films for Roger Corman, they started doing them in Japan, and they did them better in many respects. They're still silly. It's still an excuse to just do a bondage movie. And Japan, of course, has all kinds of censorship issues that make it where they have to jump through a lot of hoops to do these movies. But anyway, these are separated by a decade. From 1977 is Female Prisoner 101, Suck. And the other one is from 1987, Women in Heat Behind Bars. Don't expect any titillation here. These are historically significant only. This isn't prurient interest stuff here. This is a legitimate genre from a subgenre that was prominent in Japan for a good 2 decades. To some degree, still is. And these are interesting from the standpoint of what these filmmakers had to do to sort of serve the genre, but jump through the hoops that Japanese censors create for them. And, bottom line, these are just women in prison movies. I don't need to tell you the plot. You know the plot. Of the two, I'm going to say Women in Heat Behind Bars is the better film because it's actually really funny. It's got some very, very campy stuff in it because by 1987, they realized that this genre was ridiculous. They might as well have some fun with it.
I love it.
Let's see. All right, go for it.
You got a few more over there?
No, go for it.
Some more of
Jump
those?
into that.
This just happened to be Robert Downey Sr.'s movie, A Greaser's Palace. Robert Downey Sr., of course, Putney Swope, father of Robert Downey Jr., obviously. People
bit of a cult filmmaker in his own right.
Filmmaker back in the day. By the way, if you want to see some of Robert Downey Jr.'s earliest work, watch Robert Downey Sr.'s earliest films because Jr.'s in the movies.
And there is a boxed set from the Criterion Eclipse line, by the way, of a whole bunch of Robert Downey Sr. movies. So don't think that he's just a schlockmeister. He made movies that are sort of very representative of the era.
Well, even this one was a social satire about the persecution of Christ set in the Old West with Alan Arbus and the sort of zoot suit sort of. It's a perfectly bizarre film.
Greaser's Palace.
But kind of neat and worth seeing. Special features include this HD scan of the original camera negatives and an on-camera interview with Robert Downey Sr., who's an interesting guy. He used to pop up on like the Merv Griffin show and Mike Douglas show and the Dick Cavett show back in the day. A very intellectual fellow. If you're wondering where Robert Downey gets his sort of off the beaten path dynamic, you got it from his daddy. Liner notes here by Jonathan Demme, Greaser's Palace.
Got a bunch here from Severin. And Severin, of course, does some of the best cult stuff of anybody out there. These are all Blu-rays. They come in the trademark black keep case that Severin releases stuff in. The first two are the 3rd and 4th installments in the Zombie series. Zombie 3, significant because directed by Lucio Fulci. And, I'm not an expert in the series. I'm not going to tell you, Zombie 3 is the best. You know what? They're all zombie movies. But as far as the whole giallo thing, it's certainly, and it's, given that it has Lucio Fulci's trademark imprint on it, this is the first time this film's ever been on any kind of HD here, and it's a really nice transfer. I can't exactly say it's a good movie. It's got some interesting stuff in it, like there's an interview with Claudio Fragasso, who would go on to do Zombie 4, which is the other one that we're going to talk about in a second. So he took over for Fulci, but you kind of get a sense of what they were trying to do that was different from what was happening in the United States at the same time. Zombie 4 After Death, the one where Claudio Fragasso came in as director, is very much a different film. And it's actually a much more disturbing film. It's still very campy, very tongue-in-cheek, but it kind of crosses. It was shot in the Philippines. It starred a porn star. It goes into some very interesting different areas from what the series had been up until that point, and that also has some very interesting extras on it, including another interview with Claudio Fragasso and his co-screenwriter, and an interview with actor Chuck Payton. So some good stuff on there.
Excuse me. Go on.
Also from Severin is a surprisingly well. I'm gonna mention both of these kind of in the same breath because there are a lot of really good British actors in both of these, and they do really good work. And notably, Peter Cushing, most significantly, is in both of these. And the films are Asylum and Now the Screaming Starts. Asylum is probably the better film. It has an amazing cast, which includes, again, Peter Cushing, Britt Ekland, Charlotte Rampling, Patrick McGee, Herbert Lom. It's a really terrific cast. The movie is not up to snuff of the cast. That's really the fault of Roy Ward Baker, who's who's a legit director, but he just doesn't really bring. I guess maybe didn't have the budget. This was made in 1972. And written by Robert Bloch, of course, who wrote Psycho and such television as Star Trek episode Wolf in the Fold. And it also has Barry Morse from Space 1999. Good old Barry Morse. We love Barry Morse. So this is sort of in the Hammer vein, but it's a little bit grittier. It's a little rougher. And Charlotte Rampling is just young and absolutely unbelievable. And it's got some really spooky stuff in it, and that's Asylum. They even turned the title into the tagline in a very clever way. Come to the asylum to get killed.
Neato.
And Now the Screaming Starts is not quite as solid, but it's solid in its own way. Patrick McGee is in here as well with Herbert Lom and Peter Cushing. This one is again directed by Roy Ward Baker, written by Roger Marshall. This was made the following year in 1973, and it's a little bit more uneven, a little more schlocky, a little more horror. It goes for the gore factor a little bit more. But I guess, and it's very gothic horror set in the 18th century. But if it's kind of trying to be in that Hammer vein, borrowing Cushing from those movies, and if you like the genre, you'll certainly respond to it. The last here that we have from Severin. I'm going to mention this one next. Shocking Dark. This is from Bruno Mattei. This was made in 1989. It's not really from the 70s period, so it doesn't have that. This is much more recent Italian giallo, and I don't even know if it is giallo. It's just sci-fi horror, sci-fi monster movie stuff from the 80s, done Italian style. Anyway, it's fine. It's okay. Speaking of women's prison movies, Bruno Mattei previously did Violence in a Women's Prison, and this is co-written by Claudio Fragasso again, who did the zombie movies. I guess it owes a little bit to Alien, and it owes a little bit to all the other creature movies of the 1980s, but it's not done as well. So I didn't find this terribly compelling on any level. The last two here are really, really classic. Violence in a Women's Prison, which we just made mention of, is sort of the archetypal Italian version of this. It's not as good as what they had in Japan. It's not as interesting as what they did in the United States. But if you want to be a completist about the genre, you'll definitely want to see it. It tries to be sort of more disgusting than horrific. And that's sort of easy to do. The last one is just priceless. This is so beyond funny, and I don't think it was ever meant to be funny. This is Emanuelle and the Last Cannibals. Now, Tim and I were talking before the show that Emanuelle, there's no copyright on Emanuelle. If you wanted to go out and make an Emanuelle movie today, you could do it, because all the Emanuelle movies, they spell her name differently. The original, you could spell it with one M or two M's, two N's, one N, two L's, an E at the end, no E at the end. You could just spell Emanuelle any way you want. It's it's an Emanuelle movie. And Emanuelle and the Last Cannibals is just beyond the pale. There's no reason to have made this movie. This was directed in 1977 by Joe D'Amato, who just made the worst films ever, and cranked them out like nobody's business. Anna Maria Clemente is the star; plays Emanuelle in this one, and it makes no sense at all. She just goes into the Amazon and she finds a bunch of deranged sex cannibals, and then they just shoot a bunch of sex cannibalism scenes. That's all that goes on.
Sex cannibals, they're a lot of fun.
That's it.
Interesting that you mentioned Emanuelle. I have Frank Eva in front of me, which in the cast is Sylvia Crystal.
Yes, who played the original Emanuelle.
Who played the original Emanuelle. But in fact, this preceded her. The director of this film was a guy named Pim de la Parra.
Yeah.
And it is, I don't know, it's said that she told him, "Why don't you discover me?" So he put her in this movie. Frank and Eve, is about this guy and this girl, their boyfriend and girlfriend. They're nuts about each other, except he's always cheating. She can't stand that. Eventually, she gets sick of it, and she starts cheating on him. Ends up pregnant, and everything that sort of happens out after that. This is all about 1972, 1973, when the film is set. So it's one of those sort of sexy, hairy 1970s quasi-Emanuelle sort of films, exploring all the sexual mores of the day. Interesting stuff. Blu-ray and DVD, a new high-definition transfer here. Lots of special features, including an audio commentary by Pim, as well as some, upfront and naked sex and Dutch films, because the Dutch were getting way sexier and naked than us way back then. Interesting, though, that Sylvia's in that movie. I have the violence movie. In the middle 80s, maybe about 1988, 1989, these two brothers named Wilkinson, I think one of them was named, if I'm not mistaken, David, and the guy who directed this film, his brother Eric, make this film called The Violence Movie. It was sort of a parody about a stalker or serial killer kind of movie. Short little film, 13, 14 minutes long. It became a bit of a cult classic in the 80s. They shot it on VHS and edited it in the interesting way that we used to do back then, where you would have two decks linked together and sort of like do these pauses and cut the film together. Nevertheless, it became something of a cult classic, good enough so that they made another one called The Violence Movie 2, only a little bit longer. The thing about these movies they really are just sort of parodies of these movies. You got these two short films, and they add a little bit more to them, stick them together. You got enough stuff that you can actually put out a DVD. Which is sort of interesting. The Violence Movie and The Violence Movie 2, shot on VHS. Kind of neat, though, thinking about the sort of back-in-the-day filmmaking trend that people were doing in the late 80s back then. The Devil Incarnate by Paul Naschy.
It's Paul Naschy.
Yeah,
we've covered the Paul Naschy collection in the past. Yeah. I mean, another Schlockmeister, made tons of movies.
Yeah, most of them not so good.
You could never have an actual complete Paul Naschy collection because there would be no room left to live in your home. That's how many movies he made.
He made a movie every 20 minutes, and most of them about 20 minutes worth of watch. This is set in 16th century Spain. It's about the devil. He literally comes to Earth. He becomes immortal, and he simply wanders around the world with a human companion, watching and interacting with humans as a baby, all kinds of stuff. And what he finds out is that humans are infinitely more devious than he is. At least that's the suggestion here. 1977 Spain. It's from Mondo. Who is this from?
That's Mondo. Mondo Macabro.
Mondo Macabro.
Yeah, Mondo Macabro.
Kind of interesting. Special features include this brand new 4K transfer and an introduction to the film by the director, an interview with the lead actor, and a few of the other folks involved in the movie. Good stuff.
So I got a few Trauma titles here. Gosh, we love Trauma and Lloyd Kaufman. And then we'll see if we can get through some foreign stuff before we wrap the show out. So Trauma, here's the thing. Whenever Lloyd Kaufman has Trauma send out any kind of a thing, like my email blasts and the new Trauma, everyone else will send you, Warner Brothers is releasing, Paramount is releasing, Criterion is releasing this and such on this and that. Lloyd Kaufman, it takes nothing seriously in the world.
No.
Nothing. You will get something like, angry about Trump and Kim Jong-un? Well, so am I, and that's why you should. And somehow that'll deviate into some dumb movie
something to do with the Toxic Avenger.
Something with the Toxic. They should have sent Toxie over there to negotiate. It's that kind of stuff. It's just he takes nothing seriously, and it's so funny. So we're gonna go right through them. All of these, I'll tell you this right now. They got 5 Trauma films right here. All of them are absolutely hilarious.
Yeah,
they are. You will cry. You will laugh so hard. I had never seen Junkbucket. So they decided, I guess most people hadn't seen it, so they put Junkbucket on as an extra on the sequel, which is Junk Bonds, The Return of Junkbucket. And this is just basically kind of a oh gosh, it's so stupid. This is basically a satire of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. and a satire in the bloodiest, most ridiculous possible way. And it's just so hilarious. And it's not offensive. It's not, gory in any kind of a way that'll shock you. It's just really, really funny. This actor named Peter Litvin is a terrible actor, and he's so funny in this movie called Hectic Knife. And this is really kind of unusual even for Troma. Made in 2015 and done in a way that looks like a movie that was made for about $1.52 in like 1979. I think that was clearly intentional. And they have a blooper reel on here as well. But the whole thing, actually, you could even say this thing feels almost like George Romero. It's very, very weird. But it's like a slasher superhero movie done really hyper low budget style. And there's a whole like thing about bagels in here that makes no sense. It's just unbelievably funny. And then you get a little bit of I guess I want to say this is where Lloyd Kaufman meets Czech animation and Nathaniel Hawthorne. How about that? The movie is Gutboy, a bad time story. This is they call this is the only way that I can describe it because this is how they describe it. The world's first marionette musical black comedy riddle film. It's exactly what it is.
That means absolutely nothing.
I know. It's from Mars. This thing is so bizarre. And it's got the whole marionette thing going, but it's got I don't even know how to describe this. It's weird. It's like shadow puppets and marionettes and a weird mythical journey, and it's just and Gutboy, and it's just so bizarre. A little bit more on the accessible realm is Essex Spacebin. This is the lowest budget science fiction film I have ever seen, and it's brilliant as a result. It is genuinely hysterical. They made this for maybe like $150. This is about the idea that there's a portal to another world in the town of Essex in England, and they really don't make much of a very good effort to discover it. They just shoot the thing in a couple of rooms and you're done. And then I think the best of all of these is Rose and Viktor, No Mercy, which is kind of like a Bonnie and Clyde / Easy Rider / Natural Born Killers spoof, and it's pretty darn funny, and it's actually surprisingly well done. This was made just a couple of years ago, and they actually, I almost want to say they did too good of a job. It's overly well made because it's better made than most Troma films, but it actually is a lot of fun. Rose and Viktor, No Mercy, and boy, do they just tear up the town.
Sweet, sweet, sweet.
All right.
What do you think? Got time for any more?
Let's do it. Let's knock off a few foreign language films.
No problem. Let me jump into these right here. The Sweet Escape. This film is just Sandrine Kiberlin. This is just a cute movie. It's about a 50-year-old graphic design artist who lives in the city with his wife, Sandrine. And he's just, feeling claustrophobic. You know what it is? It's sort of like City Slickers.
Yeah.
From back in the day is what
sure.
it is. And he sees this kayak, and he's never rowed a boat in his life, and he decides he's going to take himself a trip down the river. And it's really sweet and really funny, and it's just one of those movies that you just kind of love. Not a whole lot of special features on this thing, but it's quite engaging, and I suggest you check it out. It's in French, of course, with subtitles. Valentina's Wedding. This is funny. Mexican film. Omar Chaparro and Mariamar Vega in this really, really cute movie. This is one of the kind of... It's funny how you look at some films and you feel like, I think these folks are sort of like behind the American zeitgeist for about 10 or 15 years or something like that. This is a 2018 film, but this is the theme of this film. A young woman has a boyfriend that she loves and intends on marrying, but her father, who's a politician, needs her to pretend like she's still engaged to her ex-boyfriend, or it's going to ruin his political campaign. She agrees to do this, even though she's preparing to marry her new boyfriend.
Oh, that's great.
Of course, wacky hijinks ensue.
Yeah.
And it's really, really, it's as ridiculous in 1983 as it sounds. I'd be damned if it doesn't work, and it's not really, really funny. And it's really, really cute. I think people should check it out. Again, not a whole lot on this Lionsgate DVD, and it is just a DVD.
got a couple of really, really cool animated movies here. Foreign language animated films that are really kind of breaking all kinds of boundaries. They deserve to be mentioned in the same breath. They both are kind of doing something similar with different cultures. One is Chinese, one is Iranian, but here we go. The Chinese film is Have a Nice Day, and this is kind of like this is sort of like I want to say Pulp Fiction crossed with Sin City in animation set in China. And it's all about a stolen bag of money and all the violence and the treachery that ensues with all these interlocking storylines that are all very cleverly put together. It's actually better than Sin City, and it's really, really interesting. And the animation is superb and it's challenging. And I can't imagine how Chinese censors even allowed something like this to float through. This is from Strand, and it is really, really interesting and really powerful and really smart. And I would love for this to be on Blu-ray as well. The other one is Tehran Taboo, and that's from Kino Lorber. This clearly was not made in Iran, but it was made in Farsi for Iranian consumption. And it's not quite animated in the same way. This is more rotoscoped, kind of in the way that Linklater did. Waking Life. It's more in that vein, not quite, but sort of more in that vein. So it's not traditionally animated; it's rotoscoped. But it's still very powerful, and it's all about these interlocking storylines, again, set in Tehran. But the focus here is that Tehran, as we see it, is not Tehran as it is, or is Tehran as the mullahs believe it to be or want it to be is not as it is. It's a metropolis like any other, with all of the vices and all the issues of sex and drugs and betrayal and swindling and money and crime, like anywhere else.
All of the things that the mullahs pretend like don't exist.
All the stuff they pretend doesn't exist and isn't going on. So it wrestles with that in a very, very interesting way. And the filmmaker Ali Suzande does not live in Iran. Don't know where Ali Suzande lives, but keep making movies like this, please, by all means.
And let me just toss in this one real quick. This was on everybody's radar.
Last
year. Loveless is the name of the film, Russian film.
Yeah.
From the director of Leviathan, a beautiful film, Andrei Zhignovsky or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce his last name, but this was an astounding film, a bleak and very heavy film. Basically, it's about a couple. They have a young son. The young couple, the couple is plainly sort of breaking up. The young son can feel all of this angst in the house. And the thing about this movie is that it's not just about this couple. It's about Russia. It's about the nation of Russia. That's what it's all really about. The son goes missing. And what this does to this couple, this family, and the rest of their relationships is what this movie is about. Man, this movie pinned me to the chair. It was, and it's a very dark movie.
There's a shot in this movie of the kid, and I tell you, and you know what shot I'm talking about, where the camera drifts over onto the kid's face, and it just tears your guts out. It is one of the most perfectly timed and executed shots and bits of performance you will ever see. It's really tremendous.
And this kid's face was just quite astounding. Anyway, a very, very good film. Special feature includes the making of Loveless.
Yep. Good stuff.
On Blu-ray, by the way.
Good stuff. Great movie here. The Brand New Testament by Jacob van Dormael, one of my favorite filmmakers in the world, who does not work enough.
Mr. Nobody.
Mr. Nobody, and he made Toto the Hero back in the early 90s, and then he made the Seventh Day. Was it the Seventh Day, Seventh Hour, Seventh Day with Daniel Auteuil, which is great. And then he took off like 20 years. Yeah, he pulled a Malik on us. It was ridiculous. The Eighth Day. That's what it was. The Eighth Day. And I did the junket for that too, with Daniel Auteuil and the kid, the kid with Down syndrome, who were wonderful.
He also made Brand New Testament just a couple of
years
ago.
Brand New Testament a few years ago.
It's sort of interesting too.
Yes, and that's what this is. So the Brand New Testament came on the heels of Mr. Nobody, and kind of represents a return to form for Jaco, which deals with the subject of God. Don't put Jaco out of sorts with small subjects and small concerns and things. No, he's going to wrestle with the really, really big stuff. And it starred Benoit Poulvord, who is incredibly funny, who is, of course, the comedic Belgian actor who shows up in so many great French films, including the very disturbing Man Bites Dog, which was his big debut. But he plays God here. Except he just lives in Brussels and he's a regular guy.
And he's irritating the hell out of his dog. He has a daughter, and he is really irritating her.
But the fact that it goes from all of these absurdist, that it has this absurdist structure to it and this absurdist storyline, and then wrestles with these big grandiose issues. It's a film like nothing you'll ever see in your life. This played at Cannes a couple of years ago, and it's tremendous. It is on Blu-ray. And you definitely want to check out the Brand New Testament. It's absolutely great.
Neat stuff. The Mimic. This is based on a Korean legend, a ghost story. There's some really, really wonderful ghost stories that come out of Japan and Asia. And just really, really frightening stuff. The Mimic is the idea about this ghost who can mimic the voice of humans, particularly humans that people are missing or who have lost or something like this, and you should not follow the voice into the woods or wherever. So this one is about a woman who finds a little girl, who follows the voice and finds a little girl, and perhaps she shouldn't have it. It's a really heavy little brooding and very intense, along the lines of all of those little movies that they were doing, Ringo and all that kind of stuff from years ago. The Mimic on Blu-ray.
Vazante by Daniela Thomas is a wonderful, wonderful movie. This is tremendous. This is from Music Box Films, the same people that gave us Brand New Testament. And this takes place in Brazil in 1821. And it's just one of the most beautifully photographed films you will absolutely ever see. It is pristine, gorgeous black and white photography, and it centers around the aftermath of a tragedy. And I don't want to give anything too much away because you do kind of have to get into this, but it's about a trader who suffers a certain tragedy and precipitates new changes in his life, how he moves his life to a different place, the choices that he makes, and how fate kind of takes hold of him and his family and his those close to him, and where this leads him emotionally and where it leads them socially and sociopolitically. It's a fascinating kind of focused little character study on a very particular milieu that was part of the sort of pioneering colonial period of Brazil in the early 1800s. And it could have been set in the United States just as easily at exactly the same time. Many of the issues that are treated in here are uniquely American issues from the time. This includes among the extras a Princeton University masterclass that Daniela Thomas taught, and a bunch of featurettes, and a really, really cool booklet that has an interview with Walter Salles and an essay by Professor Pedro Montero on the movie. So this is just a great movie, Vazante, Vazante. It's really worth checking out. Please.
Let me just go ahead and toss in Syria real quick, because this is another astounding film. In Syria, it's an intense film set during the Syrian conflict. A single family led by a mother who is trying to protect her family by turning her apartment into a little barricade. Her neighbors and all this kind of stuff. And the irony of the film is that even as she is engaged in protecting her family from the war outside, armed bandits break into the apartment building and are terrorizing them within their own apartment building.
Wow.
So there's a war going on that we're all may die in, and you knuckleheads I think it's a good time to actually, it just sort of speaks to the insanity of the moment. I like the Philip Van Looy, the guy who directed this, is a cinematographer, and he's a really good cinematographer. He did a couple of movies, including Natalie, a French guy from about 2003, 2004. Wonderful, wonderful film. This is just very powerful. Haim Abbas, Diamond Aboud, Juliette Navas. Good stuff. The films that come out of the Middle East, we just talked about that Iranian
So many good ones, yeah.
So many good films, man. So many good movies. So this has a bonus short film on it. It's in French with English subtitles.
Fantastic. All right, with that, we are going to wrap it up this week, and we will be back next week. We got a bunch more foreign stuff that we will pick up on next week when we come back. We'll see you guys then.